The 2026 housing market trap has been set, and you've probably been bombarded with tons of headlines about 2026. Certainly, you've seen headlines saying the housing market is going to crash and burn. You've also seen headlines saying that the housing market is going to soar and you're going to see explosive growth. You've also seen headlines saying that the interest rates, are going to plummet. So the question is, what's reality? The industry cheerleaders, they're telling you one thing, but the data, folks, is telling us something completely different. And so this isn't about a crash. It's really about a slow burn that I think we're going to see over the next year. And that could cost you a lot in this housing market if you're not careful. So that's what we're talking about today. Happy New Year. I am the housing nerd. And today it's all about 2026. I want to hear from you what you think is going to happen in 2026 with the housing market. Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to like the video when you come in. It'll bring a lot more people into the live stream and get it going. And by the way, my name is Jason Ferrier, but I am the housing nerd. I'm a realtor. I'm an investor. I've been doing it now almost 8 years and about 8 years now, actually. And let's get going. So this is the forecast for home prices from the biggest experts in the industry for 2026. And this is something that we should lead with. I think this will kind of start the story for us. So if you look at these forecasts for where home prices are going to go, one of the stories that jumps out immediately is the highest forecast is 4.5%. That's the highest forecast. Then you see the national, and that's actually from CoreLogic. So Cotality is CoreLogic. They're saying 4.5%. And then it goes down from there. The most bearish forecast for the housing market, and this is all the experts. And by the way, I'm going to give you my prediction as we go along here. I spent a lot of time thinking about the 2026 housing market. So I'm going to tell you where I think it's going to head. But the bearish forecast is from the National Association of Home Builders, if you can believe it, down 1%, they're saying. So the most bullish forecast is CoreLogic. The bearish forecast, the worst case, is down 1%. Let me know what you think about that. Now, this slide or this picture is from Resi Club. I want to give Lance credit. He's the one that put this together. This wasn't actually published at all on his site. It was kind of hidden, but I did find it. So one of the couple other ones that kind of stood out to me was, look at Zillow, 1.2%. That's what they're saying home prices will do this year, by the end of the year. And then look at this one down here, Reventure. Nick Gurley with Reventure Consulting, he made the list. You're in the big time when you make Lance's list. Up just 0.1%. So Nick basically thinks, hey, it's going to be flat. Now, when you look at my forecast for the housing market, the housing nerd, I honestly think we could see as much as of a 2% decline in home values over the next year. And I think best scenario is up 1%. So my forecast is basically down 2% to roughly up 1%. That's how I'm looking at this thing. And so I don't think it's going to be a crash. I think it's more so a slow grind. I really do. That may not be what a lot of people are wanting, but that is what I think is going to happen. And so I don't think when you look at the housing market from a price end, I don't think really one factor will drive it. So I have several factors today to review with you. But yeah, let me know what you think about this forecast, where you think home prices will head over the next year. Let's do inventory next. So my first factor when I think about home prices is inventory, homes for sale, because that really drives it. It really does. And this slide actually tells us the active inventory since 2017. But I also have some information for you going all the way back to the year 2000. And I think this will really set the stage for the prices. I got all my notes here. I got to use them. So I think overall, you're probably going to see active listings budge up 10%, maybe 15%. And the experts are in that range too, right? Their rate around an 8%, 9% increase in inventory of homes for sale. Now, this is national we're talking about. It's not local. Local could be completely different, down or up, obviously, but I'm not expecting an explosion of inventory. I'm expecting more so basically, an increase, but not an absolute massive rocket ship explosion. And I've got some info here from the great financial crisis and some of the worst times of the housing market to share with y'all. Because what a lot of people don't know is where inventory has traveled. And this is really important if you want to know really what's happening with the housing market. You got to look at inventory. So I'm going to just cover some of these points with you regarding inventory, because I think that's, again, I think it's really important we know it. Sorry. All right, inventory. So if we go back to the year 2000, if I go all the way back to the year 2000 when the housing market was just chugging along, right? Before the great financial crisis. And for those that don't know, the great financial crisis was basically like the years, a lot of people think like 2008, but it was really like 2009 through 2012 was really the bottom of the prices in the housing market, and depending on where you lived, right? But back then, home prices fell nationally through that cycle about 23%. Nationally, they fell. In some areas, like where I live in Ohio, they fell like 10%, 8 to 10%. In some areas, they actually went up. So a lot of doomers are talking about the housing crash right now and prices and saying that this time is going to be much worse than 2008. Well, let's again look at inventory, and I'm going to cover that. And I think that's going to really surprise you. So back in 2000, before everything crashed, we had about 2.3 million homes for sale. 2.3 million. How many homes do we have right now? A little over a million for sale. So back in 2000, way before the great financial crisis, we had 2.3 million total homes for sale. In 2005, we had 3.3 million homes for sale. In 2007, we had 4 million homes for sale. 4 million homes. So we're not even close to the 2000 levels yet. I mean, if you just look at this chart, it's easy to see where we are. We are not close to 2 million units, folks. 2 million homes for sale. Not even close. So this is one of the reasons why I don't think we're going to see a crash in 2026. I just don't think we are, because the inventory is not there yet. Now, could the inventory be there at some point? Sure. But what's amazing about prices and inventory is look at this right now. This is probably even more startling. This shows us the shift of prices historically. So think back to the fact that we had over 2 million homes for sale in 2000. In 2005, we had 3.3 million homes for sale. And then in 2007 is really when inventory was at its peak of over 4 million homes for sale. And right now we have just over a million. I'll keep saying that over and over again on this stream, because that is like the stat that the housing bears and quite frankly, anybody predicting housing, if they're not talking about inventory, they aren't really covering the basics of why prices drop. So take a look at this. This shows us the uh, change in prices by year. And in 2007, look at this. Look in 2007. Look at all the red. Look at 2008. Look at all the red. Look at 2009. Look at all the red. All the way to 2011, there was red. Why? Because inventory was building at an insane rate before prices fell. So before we see a massive change in home prices downwards or upwards, you've got to see a big change in inventory. And guess what? We did see that recently when homes for sale, the number of homes for sale dropped down to what, 500,000 units? When that happened, prices went up during COVID, right? And so you can easily see here 2021 and 2022. You can see how it's all blue through 2021. I guess, well, it's actually 2020, 2021. It's a lot of blue is where we gained all that home value quickly because inventory fell. So inventory matters, folks. It matters more than maybe anything else in the market. Now, I'm going to talk about jobs. I'm going to talk about black swans, white swans, AI bubbles, IA bubbles, job losses, student loans. Excuse me. Any other doomsday scenario you can come up with. I'm going to talk about those. So stay tuned for that. But what I'm seeing overall right now is that inventory just is not impressive, right? You can just see it. Just over 1 million units, homes for sale. So we need a lot more inventory to cause a big price crash. We just do. The good news is we're seeing inventory rise past pandemic levels. And I think this year will actually surpass the 2019 inventory levels. So I do think inventory will rise over the next 12 months. I think you'll see more and more people list their home for sale, especially in the spring. And we will have more homes on the market than we did in 2025. And that's why I think prices, again, my price call, I think they will be down year over year by the end of 2025. I think they will be. I think we're looking at down 1%, maybe down 2%, right around there. Flat wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if they were up either, just like 1% up. But I'm not expecting up 20%, up 8%. I'm not even expecting up 4% because I do think inventory will rise. I do. All right. So that's inventory. Next. Oh, one other thing on inventory, new listings. So when you think about the inventory, you got to look at new listings of homes for sale. If people are rushing to list their home on the market, they have to put their home on the market to have inventory, right? You can't have inventory without a new listing. You got to have a new listing. During the great financial crisis or leading up to it, we saw as much as 200 to 450,000 new listings every week. How many do we have now? Anywhere from 70 to 80,000 new listings every week. So we're woefully under the new listing trend to make inventory explode, therefore lowering prices substantially. We just are. I mean, it is what it is. Okay, next. My next factor for the prices is the transaction volume. So I think when you talk about home sales, how many people are actually buying homes? How many transactions will we have? This is what the experts say. So you've got National Association of Realtors, 4.6 million homes sold. Now this year we're going to do around 4 million, 4.1 million approximately. So 4.6 is a big jump, but it's from the National Association of Realtors, so you can't be surprised about that. Imagine what it's like working there. Like you could probably tell them something like if you work there and you're like, hey, I don't think we're going to have a very good year, they'd probably fire you. They'd be like, oh man, you're a doomer. Get out of here. Even if you have evidence supporting it, right? I can't imagine working there. Can't at all. But then there's other folks like look at Reventure, Nick Gurley, right? He says we'll have 4.32 million. He's pretty bullish, folks. You got Nick Gurley coming in being bullish. He's saying prices aren't crashing. He's also saying we're going to have more home sales. I don't know if we'll have that many. My prediction is more like 4.25. I think we'll have a slight uptick in home sales, but it ain't going to be like an explosion. I think Nick Gurley may be more bullish than me this time. What do y'all think about that? I mean, you've got some people down here. I mean, this is crazy. Look at this. Zillow says we're going to do 4.26. Nick Gurley at Reventure Consulting says we're going to do 4.32 million. So for those that love Reventure Consulting because they give you the data saying housing prices are going down and nobody's going to be buying houses anytime soon, he's one of the more bullish people on this list. I thought that was pretty funny. I wonder if he knows that. Maybe he'll change it. He's even more bullish than Realtor.com. Can you believe that? Believe it, right? So I think that's it's kind of just one of the funny observations. But in any case, if you have more transactions, and why is this important? Why are transactions so important? Because you have to have price discovery. Meaning you have to have people selling their homes at a lower price to create comparable sales to then allow people, when they comp their houses, they'll comp them lower. If the house down the street from you all of a sudden sells, 5% less than you were going to put your home on the market for, and it's a comparable house, you're probably going to adjust your price. That causes the price declines. Without transactions, you can't have price decline. You got to have churn. You got to have price discovery. I know it's not flashy, but that's what you need. So you need more transactions. And that's one of the problems we've had lately over the last few years. Haven't been a lot of transactions, not a lot of comparable sales. So we need more transactions. So I think transactions, home sales will tick up just slightly. Just slightly. I think Nick may be a little too bullish. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I am. And this is really demonstrating the lock-in effect, folks. Like that lock-in effect is sitting there right now, really just flying in the face of all the crash bros out there, right? It's going, hey man, I'm locked into my low rate. I'm locked into my low price. My payment, even though taxes and insurance have gone up, is still less than I would pay in rent, certainly less than I would pay in a mortgage for a new house. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay where I am with my low rate, low price, low payment. Now, people who bought over the last couple of years aren't in that situation. But again, we haven't had that many transactions. So like that number of people is not huge. It's not huge at all who bought in the last couple of years. That's kind of the paradox of it. So that lock-in effect is going to keep people on the sideline, I think. I think it will. All right. So that's the lock-in effect and the transactions. The other thing we need to talk about is rates. Got to talk about interest rates. So let me bring up the interest rates that the experts say we're going to arrive at. Bear with me. Sorry for the delay. Okay. So this is the rate forecast by the experts. What you can see, again, this is from Resi Club. I'll zoom in here. Maybe I can zoom in. Yeah. So when you look at this, you can see that none of these people actually have, none of these forecasts actually have interest rates at, sorry, none of these people have interest rates forecast below 5.75%. So will interest rates rise? They could. Some people think they are. Look at this. Some of the experts, Hunter Housing Economics, is saying that interest rates by the end of 2026, will be 6.6%. Mortgage Bankers Association says 6.4%. Realtor.com says 6.3%. Redfin 6.3. Let's see if Nick chimed in on this. Yeah, he did. Nick Gurley says 6.1% at Reventure Consulting. So he's a little more bullish than a lot of these other people again on rates. He's saying rates are going to come down to 6.1%. This matters. Rates matter. They matter a lot. And I know everybody's like, hey, I want lower prices. I don't care about rates. But that's not how consumers buy. Consumers buy with payment. And right now, rates are about 6.19 when I checked this morning. So will they float underneath 6%? They could. This is really important because if rates get under 6%, we will probably see a lot more transactions. We'll see people list their home for sale. We'll see buyers buy. If they get too low, though, you'll see demand explode higher and prices could probably jump up. You know, they could be on that higher scale of plus 2%. They could even go to that plus 5% if rates get too low. Not sure if that'll happen, but right now, my prediction is, the housing nerd prediction is that rates barely fall underneath 6%. I think they fall enough to unlock a little demand, but they unlock a lot of transaction activity, causing price discovery and bringing that sale price down. And that's what we need. We need some churn. I think it'll also help affordability because you're going to have wages rising, obviously. You're going to have inventory rising, which is good. You're going to have prices falling and rates falling. Not a ton, but enough to help affordability. All things being equal. So that's where I think that's what I think is going to happen with rates. So the consensus is with rates is that they're going to be, the average prediction is 6.18% from the experts. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. Okay. Now we're going to go to this next, which is your favorite one. This is everybody's favorite topic, I think. Distress. Distress. People were like, dude, FHA, I had somebody comment and say FHA delinquency was like way higher than it was during the great financial crisis. I had people tell me that, you know, and that's why we're going to see a massive crash in housing, in prices. But what do you think? Do you think we're going to see more distress? Do you think we're going to see more foreclosures? We better see more foreclosures. If we don't, something's really wrong. So I do think we're going to see more foreclosures. I think that we will see more forced selling. I think that we will see more distress overall in the housing market. I think we will. I got some stats here, though, that are going to blow your mind when it comes to distress. Now, this screen here shows you the distress and the delinquency rate during the great financial crisis. And I had to dig and dig and dig to find this. And when I'm all done, I'll add all the links to the video below. So you can come in here and look at it. But it really, I had to dig through all the quarterly statements from HUD in order to find the delinquency rate by mortgage type during the great financial crisis. It's easy to find now. The data is all over the place, but historical data was a lot more difficult to find. So I think this will, I'm just going to my notes here because I want to get this right. I want to make sure this is right. All right. Serious delinquencies. Serious delinquencies. Overall, when you look at, well, let's back up a second. Let's just look at overall delinquency. I apologize. Just bear with me 1 second. Because this is important. All right, here, I got it. Sorry for the delay. Just had to get the info right. So when I took this chart you're looking at and I compared it to what's going on right now with loans, with FHA, prime, conventional loans, not only delinquency, but serious delinquency, this is what I found out. All loans in the year 2000, 5% of all loans were delinquent in the year 2000. Today, it's 4%, 3.99. If you take all the loans and look at what percentage are actually delinquent, just not seriously delinquent past 90 days, just delinquent. 4% of all loans are delinquent. In the year 2000, not during the GFC, but the year 2000, it was 5%. In the year 2005, it was 5%. In the year 2009, it was 9% of all loans were delinquent on their mortgage. 9%. And so a lot of people, when I talk about these stats, they get upset and tell me, housing nerd, you can't compare 2025 or 2026 as we go through the year to the great financial crisis. You need to look at what happened before then. And I agree. So 2000, that's why I pulled the year 2000. That's why I pulled the year 2005. So we're looking at basically, the year 2005, we had 5% of all loans were delinquent. All mortgages were delinquent. Now we're at 4%. So we're getting there. That's one area where we're actually increasing and getting to great financial crisis levels of delinquency in mortgages. How about FHA? Glad you asked. In FHA, and if Locked Up Larry can hear me, this is for you, because you gave me some stats that need some polishing. So I wanted to help you through this stat. FHA delinquency in the year 2000 was 9.9%. And for a frame of reference, today it's 11%. So 11% of all FHA mortgages are delinquent currently. In 2005, it was 13%. In 2009, it was 14%. So in the year 2000, before the great financial crisis, before everything, all the prices crashed, right? FHA delinquency, just FHA loans alone, was 9.9, call it 10%. So we actually have more delinquency right now with FHA loans than we did during the great financial crisis, or leading up to the great financial crisis, rather. But we're still under 2009 levels. But we're close, right? We're at 11% compared to 14. We're getting there. Here's where it really gets tricky, though. Subprime. Subprime loans back during the great financial crisis and leading up to it were all the rage, right? And that includes interest-only loans, negative AM loans, undocumented loans from like a income stated loans. So loans that only were originated because you said how much you told the mortgage officer how much you made versus actually approving it with your pay stubs. You could just walk in somewhere and say, hey, I'm a clown on the weekend and I make, $100,000 a year. And they're like, no problem, approved. And folks, I was in the middle of all this because I was in new home construction during the great financial crisis. I saw it firsthand. And I had friends that got loans that were ridiculous on homes. And I was like, how do you afford that? I was renting. I lived in Southern California. I was like, there's no way. There's no way you can afford this. And eventually they didn't, and they had to leave. But a lot of them got subprime loans. Subprime loan delinquency was 15% in the year 2000, before the great financial crisis. In 2005, the weird thing is it went up. It went down to 10%. That's the weird thing. But then in 2009, that delinquency rate was 25% on subprime loans. What's the delinquency rate today in 2025, 2026? 0. We don't have subprime loans. They changed the rules. You can't have a subprime loan. Now, people will tell you FHA is the new subprime. There's a major difference that you need to be aware of, and I'll get to that in a minute. So I don't want you to get bamboozled. I don't want you to get fooled with a false sense of hope or narrative. And I'll get back to the subprime FHA thing in a minute. But then you move to prime or conventional loans, and that's like the majority of loans. In the year 2000, we were at 4% delinquency. In 2005, it was 3.5%. In 2009, it was 6%. And in 2025, it's 2.6%. So when it comes to conventional loans, we're far underneath the delinquency, even leading up to the great financial crisis. And again, that's what many of y'all have asked for. I want to know the delinquencies leading up to the GFC. Okay, that's what they are. It was 4%, 3.5%. Then it got really bad at 6% in 2009. Right now, we're at 2.6. So we're getting closer, but we're still underneath the delinquency rate leading up to the great financial crisis. So that's conventional loans. Here is where it gets really interesting, though. Conventional loans make up about 80% of all mortgages out there. FHA loans make up about 15% of all the loans out there, approximately. So what does that mean? It means if you have a ton of distress in FHA, which we do have more distress in FHA right now than anything else. If you have that, but it only makes up 15% of all mortgages out there, even if it gets really, really bad with FHA loans, it's only 15% of the market now. And John Kaminsky, shout out to John Kaminsky, he was on my channel and he confirmed that data. So it's not just housing nerd, cheerleader, realtor speculation. We've got somebody who's a mortgage expert telling us that FHA makes up a small portion of the mortgage market. And so while there will be FHA distress, and we're already seeing it, if you're only 15% of the total market and you increase your delinquencies by 5%, it's not going to crash the entire market. It just hurts the FHA market. And there is no subprime now. So people talk about subprime now is basically FHA. But the difference is, and this is the big nuance and where I don't want you to get trapped or hoodwinked in 2026. The government has backed up nearly all the loans out there. I mean, 85% or so of all the mortgages, according to Melody Wright and John Kaminsky, are backed by the government. That was not the case with subprime loans before. Did you know that? And so what happens when the government backs up anything? It can go for years being underwater and they still keep it going. Look at Amtrak. Look at the Postal Service. Neither of those have made money, I don't know, in my lifetime. And they keep going. Why? Because they're backed up by the government. As Melody Wright says, watch what they do, not what they say. Well, what they've done is they've had the taxpayer, you, Mr. Taxpayer, stand up and guarantee all these loans. So the chances of all that falling apart without the government stepping in my eyes, are very slim. Now, on the other side of the coin, we've got all that guardrails, all the FHA extend and pretend that's ending or has ended. right? And so John Comiskey, again, mortgage expert, predicts that there's about 250,000 FHA loans that'll flow through to maybe foreclosure. That's kind of the kink in the hose, right? And for those that don't know, the government put a bunch of things in place. Some people call them guardrails, but they're basically, hey, they put extend and pretend in place during COVID, and it just ended recently where over the last 5 years you could essentially stay inside your house without making a mortgage payment, and the government was making the payment for you and then putting it on the backside of your loan. So you were still accruing more and more debt, but you weren't having to make your mortgage payment. And that caused a big backlog of distressed loans and kept foreclosures away. Now that has been changed and turned off, those extend and pretend programs. We are now seeing more foreclosures flow through. It's like a hose that's been unkinked. There's a big rush of water and then there's a steady flow. So I think we'll see more and more foreclosures because those rules have been removed. And the areas where there are more FHA loans, we'll see more distress. So an area like Atlanta, which has like 25% of all the loans are FHA, probably see more distress there, right? Anywhere that there's fraud in the system that they happen to catch, you're going to see more distress there, obviously. But we're talking about 250,000. Heck, even if we were talking about 500,000 foreclosures hitting the market, think about that and compare it to the fact that there were 400,000, upwards of 400,000 new listings a week hitting leading up to the GFC. And if you add 500,000 listings now, well, you just add it, right? But it's not like you're adding 5 million, is what it is. The takeaway of all that is, hey, FHA does not make up a massive portion of the housing market. It just doesn't. And that's where most of the distress is now. I mean, you all have told me that, and I agree. Quickly, though, serious delinquencies, where are those? And this is all important for 2026 because a big narrative of 2026 by a lot of folks predicting a whatever, 50%, 38%, doesn't really matter, housing crash is that distress is going to rear its ugly head. So that's why I'm hitting on distress so much. If you look at serious delinquency, all loans right now are about 1.6% as of today. Leading up to the great financial crisis, they were only 1%. So we have more serious delinquency than we did back during leading up to the great financial crisis. I mean, it's not a ton more, 0.6%, but it is more. 2009, though, at the height of the GFC, we had 4% serious delinquency. In 2025, we've got 4% of all FHA loans are seriously delinquent, 90 days or more past due. 4% of all loans. In the year 2000, it was 2%. In the year 2005, it was 3%. FHA, folks, seems to be in a much worse situation than it was leading up to the GFC. It does. It seems like the distress is much more than it was leading up to the GFC. The big part, though, during the GFC was the subprime, which was only 2.5% in 2005, but in 2009, it was 18%. I mean, that was a lot. Subprime loans it was crazy. And by the way, this is another important thing. I can't believe I forgot this. Subprime loans made up approximately 20 to 25% of all mortgages leading up to the great financial crisis. 20 to 25%. Think about that. So while you do have conventional loans that may be delinquent, you're going to have obviously FHA loans are in trouble. You got to look at the mix of how much that represents. And that's what the people that just continually call for a housing crash without ever even giving you the straight data, that's what they miss. Or maybe they're intentionally leaving it out. I have no idea. But the next time you hear someone say, hey, Subprime wasn't the cause of the crash. It was conventional. Ask that person what percentage of loans were the subprime actually made up of. Like what was the market share? Was it 5% or is it 25%? You've got a quarter during the GFC, at a quarter of all loans were subprime. Now it's zero. Can you see that? 0%. Subprime loans don't exist. Now you could say it's FHA, that's 15%, but then there's no other FHA. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? You can't call it subprime and FHA. It's FHA. Just call it FHA. Now they have lowered the requirements for getting an FHA loan. They've lowered the credit requirements. But so you could consider it subprime, but it's not interest only. It's not negative AM. It's not income stated loans or stated income loans, right? It's not that. It's not pick your rate or pick your payment loan. But we've got a massive problem in FHA loans right now. Unfortunately, it only makes up 15% of the market nationally. There could be pockets where it's 25%. I think in Ohio, it's like 20% of all loans are FHA. So it's higher. It's higher. But back during the GFC, you had subprime at 25% of the market, and they were upwards of, 18% seriously delinquent and 25% delinquent, period. And that's why you saw a massive amount of distress. That's why you saw a massive amount of inventory, hence lower prices. See how that works? Now you've got, overall, you have lower forced selling, lower distress, a fewer number of people that need to sell versus want to sell, right? New listings are down 3% year over year. So it's not a rush of distress trying to list their home. Otherwise, new listings would be up. New listings is very binary. It's either yes or no. There's no algorithm there. There's no mysterious, data is cooked narrative that you can throw at it. It's, hey, did somebody list their house for sale? Yep. Nope, they didn't. Okay. It is what it is, right? It's just new listings. So I thought that was important to go through the delinquency from the great financial crisis and leading up to it, because it's not exactly what we're seeing now. Not even close. That could change. Anything's possible. So watch delinquency. Watch distress. Watch it, right? Particularly in your area. But don't look at it on a year-over-year increase basis, because you're going to see, I just saw a headline yesterday from Realtor.com saying, hey, foreclosures are up 30% or 20%. It's like, yeah, but look historically at them. Are they up 30% from 2007? No, they're way down. Oh, okay. It's a big nothing burger. Anyway, that's what's happening with distress. So that's the other factor in the housing market, I think. We got transactions, we got distress. I spent a lot of time on this. Let me see if I've got anything else for you here on this. Yeah. So next would be, let's just talk about regional differences for a second. So I think the other part of my forecast would be, hey, nationally, rents, prices could be flat to slightly down. Up 1% wouldn't surprise me either. But regionally, it's going to be much different. So in areas where we're seeing a lot more new construction, in areas where we're seeing a lot of FHA distress, for instance, any area where you're going to have a lot of job loss, let's say, areas where maybe they're affected by natural disaster or rising property taxes or rising insurance more than usual, you're going to see more new listings, more people distressed, having to sell, being forced sellers. That will turn into inventory, which will then cause prices to fall in those areas. So You got to watch inventory in your market. That is the bellwether sign for where the housing market's headed. And we're seeing that right now. That's like what we see in reality, right? Again, during the GFC or leading up to the GFC, inventory exploded. Prices did not fall yet. Then, after inventory exploded, prices fell. During COVID, inventory plummeted. Prices didn't jump immediately, although they did jump very quickly, right? But as soon as inventory fell, right after that, prices went up, and they went up a lot. So we need the opposite. We need a lot more inventory to hit the market, and then prices will fall. So locally, if you see a lot more inventory hit your street, hit your neighborhood, prices will probably fall. And you got to look at it from a historical basis. Again, remember, 2005, right when the GFC was starting, or the worst times the housing market were starting, we had 3.3 million active homes on the market. During the worst time of the housing market, right before prices completely plummeted, we had over 4 million active listings. Now, just over 1 million. So we need like an exponential growth of new listings to see some type of massive housing cataclysmic crash. And I'll get to your comments, I promise. Almost done. My wild cards. These are my wild cards. So people talk about AI, black swans, white swans, currency debasement. I'm trying to remember all the doom scenarios. Auto loans, private credit, student loans. Job loss seems to be the biggest one, right? Unaffordability. People will name unaffordability. Property taxes, insurance. I guess I don't know. There's probably other ones I'm not thinking of. Tell me if you know any other doom scenarios I missed. But any of those scenarios, any and all of them, may happen, may not. If they do and they affect the housing market, you will see it in the delinquencies, and you'll certainly see it in the new listings. Folks, people do not put their home on the market to test the market and then rage delist or rage quit if they need to sell, if they have to sell their home because they don't have a job, if they have to sell their home because the taxes, the insurance have become unmanageable. If any of that happens, they will leave their house on the market and drop the price to a point at which a buyer buys. So all of those economic doom scenarios that people talk about all filter through. It's almost like a big funnel, right? It's like you got a big funnel and there's all these balls you're throwing in the funnel, and every ball is a different part of distress. Like, hey, high taxes, job loss, AI, stock market, Bitcoin, aliens arriving on the earth, currency debasement, silver blowing up the banks, whatever, name it, tariffs, I don't know. All those things are little balls that you throw in the top of the funnel. And then at the very bottom of the funnel, you know what comes out? Inventory of homes for sale. That's what comes out. And that drives a lot of people insane because they're like, hey, housing nerd, job losses will cause the housing market to crash. It's like, okay, if that happens, you'll see it in new listings first, then it'll flow through to inventory, and that will flow through to prices. That's just how it functions. So again, I personally don't pay attention to a lot of those doom scenarios because I don't know what's going to happen. All I look at is the data and deliver that to you. And by the way, it's time for a plug. If you have got some value out of today, subscribe to the Housing Nerd for more stuff like this. I'm going to give you the data, whether it's good or bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm certainly not going to hide the bad data from you. Just not going to do it. And I don't cheerlead because I don't care if you buy a house or not. I really don't. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me if you sell your house. I just work here. I don't run the place. So That's where I am right now with the housing forecast. I think all those scenarios may happen. None of them may happen. A few may happen. We will see it in new listings and inventory. We will see it. So, in conclusion, no sudden crash, no sudden explosion of home prices, very slow grind sideways. This year could be next year. It could be. It could be a couple years, could be 3-4 years for that to happen. And all this has to do with affordability, right? Like if affordability is wrecked, people aren't going to buy homes. Like they haven't. They haven't been buying homes at all. Transaction volume has been very low. And that keeps prices high, unfortunately, unless there's a massive amount of distress that makes people put their homes on the market, causing inventory to explode and prices to fall. So that's what's happening with 2026. Let me look at some comments here. Hopefully that all made sense. If it didn't, feel free to ask some questions. What's up, Evil Overlord? Good morning. First in, thumbs up given. And Portage County if you're doing the comparison. Not doing individual markets today. I will do that later this week, though. Definitely do a big live on probably, it'd be on Thursday, actually. I'll do that. So check it out, Evil Overlord. And thanks for jumping in. Happy New Year to you guys. No crash, right? I don't think, locally there could be crashes, right? You've got Florida, Texas, people name those, but shoot, there could be places in Ohio, could be places in the Northeast that crash, like small pockets, right, where inventory is absolutely exploded. It could happen. It could. But nationally, we just don't have the momentum with inventory. All about supply and demand. Crash for those who have to sell, right? But there will be plenty of buyers looking for a good deal. Okay, well, I had a little extra bullet point here, and you beat me to it, Evil Overlord. You're exactly right. Like, remember in the GFC as it ended, as there were tons of homes left on the market, right? Fannie and Freddie Mac were like, what do we do with all these homes? We've got thousands of homes in foreclosure. And this is like 2012, I think. And remember, institutional investors didn't even exist then. They didn't even exist. Investors existed in the housing market, but not institutional. Fannie and Freddie invited them into the housing market. They actually called them and said, we will give you an insane loan, like a 0% loan, if you take these homes off of our hands. And they said, sure, we'll do that. And they bought up thousands of distressed properties. Now, you've got those same folks now in the market before a crash. You've got mom and pop investors like me. You've got normal buyers like all of you out there. And a lot of y'all tell me I got cash ready to deploy. I'm just waiting on lower prices. Guess what? Investors like me, institutional investors, other home buyers are all waiting on lower prices. So how much do prices drop before other people buy? I mean, I've had people on my channel tell me, hey, I've waited for prices to fall. They've come down where I live and rates came down. So I jumped on it and bought something. That's exactly what happens. Now, if credit is completely constrained, nobody can get a loan, massive job loss across the country, well, that'll look a lot different, obviously. But we'll see that through new listings and transactions. So you're right. There could be massive amounts of people jumping on opportunities as prices come down. Very possible. Should I sell my Leary Kids Center franchise? My Leary Kids Center? I don't know. Leary Kid. I don't know anything about that. And I'm not a franchise expert, so I can't answer that. My area has low inventory and nobody is buying homes. I think pricing will go down in my area, but I think it'll be slow. Josh Hall, what's up? Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that, right? It's like not a crash. It's like not an increase, not a decline. And if it's a decline, it's small, right? Yeah, not a lot of transactions. It's weird. Like the crash we've had in the housing market in the last 5 years has been transactions, not prices. And that drives people insane. Probably drives you insane. If you're hoping for a price crash, I'm not saying you, Josh, but other people out there are like, man, I can't wait for the housing market to crash. Look at this. Interest rates went up. Nobody's buying homes. You're right. Nobody's buying homes. Prices have are unchanged. I mean, they're basically flat year over year right now. Really, literally flat. Like Zillow has them at like 0.1% up, 0.1%. That's it. I mean, but honestly, like we're talking about 1%, 2%. Like when prices have gone up 5 or 50% in 5 years, right? National average is like, I think 48% in 5 years. Some places went up 100%. What's 1%, 2% going to do? Nothing. Nothing. I think they're going to lag inflation. I mean, real home price growth will probably be negative. Was there a similar pattern of housing listings and delistings that's happening now than in 2007 and 8? So I reviewed, this is probably earlier when you put this. I appreciate you asking. I reviewed all that as far as inventory goes, which is pretty crazy. And I'll link it all in the description. But I had to like pull multiple different data sources and kind of cobble the info together to get the inventory picture because it's not readily available online. But they didn't have delisting info back then. They really didn't. They barely had any info. So delistings, can't tell you about that. But inventory, completely different. I mean, I can't say it enough. In the year 2000, way before the great financial crisis, this was during the dot-com crash, right? We had 2 million homes on the market. And now we've got like just over 1 million nationally. We're not even back to the 2000 level yet. 2005, we had 3.3 million. 2007, we had 4 million. And then prices fell off the face of the planet. What do you think about builders not being able to sell high and builds at prices they want? Is this something with historical analog? Is that an analog? Well, I think, I mean, builders are definitely going to be under pressure in 2026. I think you're going to see housing starts are not going to explode. Not a lot of builders are putting new homes. They're not, putting shovels in the ground right now because there's not a lot of demand. So they're not going to do what they did in 2005 when they kept building. And lumber, if you guys caught the uneducated economist interviews, lumber is like gone. Like there's not a lot of lumber supply and mills are shutting down. Like entire sawmills are being shut down because there's no demand. There's no incentive for them to mill any lumber because home builders aren't building. Why? Because demand of housing is not there. So if we don't see something change with demand, we're going to be in a big pickle potentially in the coming years with home supply because there's no supply being built right now. And there's not a lot of supply being started. Well, let me rephrase that. There could be new homes being finished right now and completed or mid construction, but there's not a lot of new starts. New starts are just very anemic. So I think builders overall are going to be in trouble. I think they're going to struggle margin wise, and I think demand is going to struggle. And I think old homes is really I think they're going to shine. I think old homes are going to shine. I mean, everybody has horrible things to say about new homes, right? I mean, there are probably a lot of good new homes, but there's a lot of bad ones out there too. Yeah, I think they're going to have to continue to whack their price. But here's the difference. It's a different product, right? A new build is way different than an existing home. I mean, a lot of people want existing homes because they're in like mature areas, right? Where there's like mature landscaping, the lots are bigger. I mean, think about in the next 10 years, Evil Overlord. Just think, and anybody listening to this, think about what the product looks like from a housing market standpoint. Think about it. Like you've got a old home built in 1950 or 60 with a half acre lot inside the city limits. Okay. Maybe it's not brand new, but it has a massive lot with mature trees. Looks like it's been there a while, right? Then you've got a new home that's sandwiched against the next home, and you could literally just reach out and grab your neighbor's like ketchup in the morning for eggs. I don't use that, but salsa maybe, right? Or hot sauce for your eggs. You'd be like, hey, I'm going to reach over to my neighbor and grab it. So you've got all these new homes being built, but they're all sandwiched into each other. That's why I think a lot of people like older homes because they have bigger lots, right? And they're kind of like a lot of times are grandfathered in from a design perspective. They look different. They're not just cookie cutter. Now, some people won't want the cookie cutter, what's the name of that movie? Vivarium, I think, where all the houses look the same. Some people want that. Fine. But that's what's being built right now. And I don't think everybody wants it. I think that's why they're struggling with prices. I do. Drop some thumbs up. Yeah, there you go. Thanks. I'm seeing a slight increase of listings in the Midwest now. Yeah, we have a slight increase of listings. We need them big time. The problem is not a lot of them are great. They're in areas where maybe people don't want to live, or, they need a ton of work. Still not seeing a lot of great homes that are ready to move into. Just not. And I'm hearing that from a lot of places in the US. Like, a lot of the inventory we're seeing is like torn up. It's an older home, but needs $100,000 in work. That's why I no longer follow Reventure. Yeah, I was surprised at their forecast. I was like, wow, they're really bullish. Like, he doesn't think home prices are going to fall year over year. So let it be known to those listening that the housing nerd is more bearish than Reventure Consulting for the 2026 market. I don't think sales are going to grow as much. I don't think interest rates are going to be as low as Nick predicts. And I don't think prices are going to maintain where Nick says they're going to be. Nick says 0.1%. I say going to be down just maybe a couple percentage points. But who knows? He could be right. We could see home prices continue to go up. This time around, there are DSCR loans and BRRRR method. As rent drops and assessments drop, the BRRRR Ponzi scheme will fall apart. Well, the BRRRR Ponzi scheme, for those that are trying to do it now, it's already fallen apart. It's a good point, though. That's a good point. There are DSCR loans. But remember, 80% of the mortgage market is backed up by the government, non-DSCR, 80%. So again, you've got that small percentage are DSCR loans. And folks, if you don't know what that is, that's a debt service coverage ratio loan. I use them. As an investor, I use them. They basically it's actually like a great loan to get. It's 10 times easier than dealing with a bank. And the amazing part is the rates are actually sometimes lower than conventional rates, which makes no sense, but whatever. They're private investors that pull their money together and then lend them out to investors like me. So what they'll do is they look at your debt service coverage ratio, how much your rental property is covering based on the debt. So if the mortgage is $1,000 a month and you can rent the place for $2,000 a month, if that's the requirement, 2 times the mortgage, then, and you meet that, then they'll approve you on the loan without even looking really at your tax returns or, all the stuff that conventional loans look like, pay stubs and all that jazz. They look at your credit, they'll look at stuff like that, but they don't look as deep. They're really doing the DSCR approach. And there are a lot of loans out there like that. Happens all the time. The difference, though, is that it's just not a big part of the market. That's the problem. That's like nuance. That's like one of the most important things that if you haven't learned anything today, learn that as you see more and more articles about distress, if it's FHA, if it's DSCR, these little non-government backed loans, like a DSCR, even though FHA is backed up by the government, if it's backed up by the government, you can probably assume that the government's going to step in if anything happens. Now, is that what they should do? No, that's what they do. And to pretend they don't is insane. But DSCR is something out there. Hey, from Arizona, what up, Lisa? How's Kingman? How many of the subprime loans were for non-owner occupied properties? How many of the subprime loans, FHA loans, require owner occupied for a year? Right. I don't know on the subprime. That's a great question. You're going to give me more homework? I did homework for the last 4 days on this thing. FHA loans require owner occupied for 1 year. Unless, you mean for an investment, right? Unless, you buy a duplex, triplex, or quad. If I buy a 2-unit, a 3-unit, or 4-unit building, I can move in with my FHA loan and rent it out that day. Now, I'm not a mortgage expert, so you should consult a mortgage professional. I'm just a realtor and investor. But I I've never used an FHA loan to do this, but I do know those rules exist. And yeah, it's not fraud. That's, again, I just want to be transparent with y'all. If you buy a single family house with an FHA loan and you don't live there at all, generally speaking, you can't rent it out. You're not allowed to. That's a lot of cases that's fraud in the first year. But after the first year, you can then turn it into a rental property. So it is legal to do that. It is legal to have an Airbnb as an FHA loan. You just have to live in it 1 year, or you got to have a multi-unit building and live in that building. So if I have a 2-unit building and I buy a house or a duplex with FHA, I can put a renter in one side as long as I live in the other side. Day one. Not a lot of people know that. And the people that say FHA loans with investors are fraud, they never tell people that. They don't actually close the loop and say, by the way, this is when it's not fraud. Obviously, because they have a narrative and they want you to think, oh, there's all this fraud out there. We're all doomed. But I get your point. Hi from Arizona. What up? A lot of Arizona people love it. Trump already made comments that we might need to close USPS. Sure. Right? Well, who's going to deliver our mail? Maybe he has a plan. I don't know. Whatever. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. But they're not going to close Amtrak. The point is, how many government programs don't make money? I don't know. A lot, it seems like. Well, if that's the case, and they've backed up all these loans, 85%, right? 80 to 85% of all loans backed up by the U.S. government. How in the world do you think they're just going to let it crash? They're just going to keep funding it, extend and pretend, print more money, whatever we got to do. Whatever we got to do. Trump also made comments we need cheaper homes for young Americans. At the same time, that's a great point. In that same interview, remember what else he said? We don't want prices to come down for people who have existing homes. How do you do that? Well, the only way to do it is to lower rates, really. And he said you don't want to increase supply too much. Heaven forbid, even Trump knows that supply and demand is the main factor. He said in that same statement, I did a video about it a few days ago, or last week, right? Was it last week, the week before? Like, hey, I want lower home prices for young Americans. At the same time, I don't want people who have existing homes to lose their value. Well, how are you going to do that? Again, the only way to do that, in my head, would be lower rates. Because if rates come down, there's going to be more demand causing prices to go up, but the rates are lower. So it looks more affordable because the monthly payment is more affordable. But overall, is it more affordable? No, it's not. But the entire administration is focused on payment, not price. Everything they talk about is payment. So you can't build more supply overnight. Supply is very inelastic. I mean, how long does it take to build a home? A year? 8 months? That's for when it starts. But you got to plan it. You got to buy the lumber, and there isn't any lumber right now, or not a lot of lumber. And you got to have a reason to build. So unless we can all of a sudden create a lot more supply, I don't see how home prices come down. We could have more supply by more distressed inventory, of course, or you got to build more homes. Remember, less than 3% of all homes in the U.S. were built after 2020. Let that sink in. Less than 3%. Nearly half of all the homes in the U.S. are 40 years or older. Let that sink in. Meaning it's a bunch of old homes, not a lot of new homes overall. So the next time somebody tells you, or you hear somebody say, we don't need any more new homes, scratch your head and go, okay, so if we don't build any new homes and only 3% of the existing stock is newer than 2020 and we stop building, what happens? Well, you saw it during COVID. We had a rush of demand, no inventory, boom, prices exploded. So you got to have more supply. That should be the solution, is longer term, more affordable supply, less regulation with building inside cities. Give more loans to people that are rehab existing homes. instead of building new ones, rehab existing ones. There's a lot of old existing homes in the Midwest. I've rehabbed a lot of them, trust me. Like myself, I've done the work. And there's a ton of them built in 1900, 1910, 1920. Some of them will be bulldozed. A lot of them need rehabbed, and they could be rehabbed. Plus, there's a lot of empty lots. Now, it's all new and everything. It doesn't have, it's not next to a Starbucks, but it's a house that's existing that you could rehab. We need more supply, folks. Got to have more supply. Got to. So people might have to lose some value. They may. Yeah, if Trump was like, hey, listen, that's a great point. We need lower prices for young adults. So existing boomers, you are going to lose money on your homes. My guess is he's not going to say that. That's my guess. He doesn't want that because that's his base, right? Trump also made comments Fannie and Freddie might have to go private. He did say that. I haven't seen any action from them at all on that yet. Actual real action. And who knows? They may. Who knows? Watching what Trump is going to do. Curious what policy he's going to come up with and how that affects prices. Yeah, I mean, who knows what they're going to come up with? I mean, there's only a few levers they can really pull, right? Again, you can't create a bunch of supply overnight. So that's out. Like, even if he said today we're going to launch a effort to build 1 million homes, you're talking like it could be years before that's done. Remember the federal land building? How's that gone? Building on federal land? How many homes have been built on federal land? Anybody know? Anybody at all? I think it's 0. Well, I mean, 0 since he started. And the federal land is in areas we don't necessarily need more construction. Like, do we need it in Alaska? Do we need it in like California? So hopefully it's not that. That's not a solution. My guess is it's going to be something to do with like capital gain tax to free up, this is purely speculation, to free up the lock-in effect. I think honestly, after, really when it comes down to it, thanks for your comment, Jay. When it comes down to it, I think there's a lot of gimmicks. But at the end of the day, supply is what we need. Good supply of homes for sale, and that increase of supply will lower prices. Next time, seriously, if you don't think we need more supply and you're looking for a home, ask yourself why you can't find one. Like if there was enough supply out there, as many claim, you hear people all the time, we got plenty of supply. We don't need more new construction. Oh, why can't you find a home then that's affordable? Because supply and demand, and it doesn't matter if people own more than one home. Those aren't available. We're talking about for sale inventory, still a quarter of what we had during the GFC, half of what we had leading up to the GFC. Got to have more inventory. And with us building fewer and fewer new homes, that could be a problem. Seems to me government is broke. Well, they're just going to keep printing money into existence. They're going to continue to print money into existence. That's what they do. That's why the fiat money system works. RAN info. Are you a runner? It looks like you got an SUV there, some kind of desert vehicle. There's another guy on here with the desert. I assume it's a guy. Desert vehicle. Maybe not a guy. I got a lot of car people on here, which is cool. I love cars, engines, combustible engines that go fast. Cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, the government is broke. They'll just keep printing money, man. That's how the fiat system works. They print money into existence because they need inflation to continue to go up in order to make the monetary system work. It's the fiat money system. It's not tied to anything. It's not backed to anything. And is there any resemblance at all of less government spending? No, none. Inflation's still there. Oh, it's only at 2.7% or 2%. Okay. But it's still there. Inflation's still there. It's not deflation. Maybe disinflation, but it's not deflation. Man, the government's just going to keep printing. So they're cash rich, right? Or debt rich, I guess. but certainly like to spend. It's one thing you can depend on is the government spending money. I install garage doors here in Columbus. Oh, cool. Oh, I just thinking about a garage door. Install for a few builders. Definitely lots of houses sitting vacant, but they are still building at a decent pace, it seems. Yeah, that's the weird thing, Jay. Thanks for commenting on this. I'm seeing the same thing locally in Ohio here. I'm seeing new construction still happening. The weird thing is the amount of new construction Ohio has, if you go out like to Texas or Florida or Arizona, it's nothing compared to what you see out there. Like they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of homes in subdivisions. And in Ohio, it's just not that. It's just not like that. So while you still see new building, the actual starts with people saying, hey, I'm going to start new construction, that overall in the US is dwindling. And we need more new construction in Ohio. Don't get me wrong. Unfortunately, you really can't buy new construction here. It doesn't seem like for under $500,000. And the property taxes are insane, right? On new construction. So is that an affordable house? Maybe it will be eventually. But right now it's not. It's interesting though that you're seeing a lot of vacant homes. I think you'll continue to see that. Eventually, if the builders get desperate enough, they will lower the prices to a point at which somebody buys it. Or they don't need to sell very bad. Right? Why we're seeing a crackdown and why we're seeing a crackdowns and layoffs. Call it what it is. Subprime FHA. Sure, subprime FHA, that's fine. That's fine. It is. But it's still only 15% of the market. Whereas subprime back in the day was as much as 25% of the market. That's a big difference there. Big difference. It's only 15% of the market. All right. If it has a lot of distress, does that cause the overall housing market to crash? Probably not. But in areas where there's a lot of FHA, that would be a big problem. Actually, here's a plug for John Comiskey. If you go on John Comiskey's Substack, he details out where FHA has the most concentration. He actually details that in his Substack in insane detail that will make your head spin. Now you got to pay for it. It's $20 a month, I think. But I subscribe to his Substack because he's got info no one else has. It's great Substack. Time for change. Atlanta is going down. Between subprime FHA and VA loans, approximately 28% of all mortgages are written by one or the other agency with low credit scores, high DTI, and the inability to pay. Yeah, and the question is, how bad does it get locally before local people step in, being like local government, state of Georgia, step in? That could happen. One of the things Melody Wright predicts is that municipalities are going to start buying homes. Like counties and states are going to start buying homes. Even the federal government may step in and start buying homes. She thinks that may happen. But however you slice it, it's government interference or intervention, whatever you want to call it. A rising unemployment rate is a major component in all this. It is. That's true. It is. Well, it's a major component to what? Listings, right? Listings. And low, well, it's really listings, because if you have lower demand from higher unemployment, if you have and higher inventory because people are not buying because of because of higher unemployment, and you have more new listings because the people that have those homes and lose their job need to sell, you'll see inventory rise, right? All comes back to inventory. It just does. So that's but you're right. Unemployment could be a trigger, right? For more listings. It could be. Something I thought of recently, I'm glad you brought this up, is, and let me know what y'all think. Like, we hear the gospel singing that the median income is XYZ and can't support home prices. And I'm not arguing with that. But the place where we get all that data from on the median household income is the same place where a lot of people think the data is cooked. I'm not saying you're saying that, but I hear people all the time tell me the data is cooked, right? Data is cooked. Can't trust the data. but they're pulling the median household income theory from that same data. And I'm like, well, how do you know that's not wrong? The point is, they also have the unemployment data. And I'm scratching my head going, is that the real unemployment rate? Is that the real inflation rate? That's why I go all the way back to the housing market and say, all right, how many new listings are there? 400,000? No. 70,000. All right. Well, it's not that bad yet then. If I see 90,000, 95,000, 105,000, 110,000, 150,000, 200,000, if you see that ramp up week after week after week after week, you know people are just throwing their homes on the market because they have to sell. Otherwise, they're going to be bankrupt. That's real distress, folks. Just wait another 12 months. There'll be plenty of foreclosures in this city. Oh, in Atlanta. Okay. These are great opportunities. Great opportunities. Any of y'all out there waiting to buy a home and been upset about prices? All this should be good news for you if you are really serious about buying a property or investing in real estate. I know a lot of people that bought foreclosures back in 2012. They're printing money today, literally printing money. They don't own anything on the house. So what if there's taxes? And they're printing money. I mean, they were buying homes for nothing. All right. Well, if we see that again, great opportunity for all of us. That's the cool thing about being like real about the data, because wherever the data goes, you can take advantage of the opportunity. You have a strategy for it. Atlanta, right. Could be ATL. ATL. I just work here. I don't run the place. Right. Yeah, I don't run the place. I'm just part of it. I'm just a cog in the wheel. I don't think that that's the case in my area. 3 massive lots just got cleared in Q4 for over 1,000 homes each. 2 developments on my road that are half built with multiple move-in ready homes in each. Oh, that's cool. Remind me where you are, McConaughey. I'm sorry. Remind me where you are. But the new construction in my area has not dropped in price. Interesting. Maybe you're telling me. How many homes are quality learning centers? I don't know what that means. I'm still getting over 1,500 people a quarter from San Fran, and it's keeping our market afloat. Oh, that's right. Oh, you're in Reno, right? You're in Reno. Yeah, Reno, Nevada has thousands of homes. Like I see that, but I'm pretty sure you're in Reno. But in Ohio, we just don't see that. We don't see massive amounts. At least I don't. Huge subdivisions. Like the subdivisions aren't impressive at all. You're like, not that big of a deal. Just a few homes. I mean, it's right at 3%, right under like 2.9% of all homes in the US, according to the US Census Bureau, were built after 2020. But if you look at Ohio, for instance, it's only like 2.5% of all homes were built after 2020. And a huge chunk of the homes here were built before 1930. Yeah, 1930. It's almost 100 years old. Just not a lot of new construction. Not as much as a lot of people, say when you think about like a national look. McConaughey, same here. They're just giving granite countertop, fancier 6-panel doors, fancier front door, and crown molding for the same price. Yeah, they're just putting in incentives. No big deal. And that's not, I mean, that's normal salesmanship. Like people get dismayed at, hey, I can't believe they're giving away those incentives. They're buying down the rates. It's like, well, that's what people do in sales. They incentivize the customer. Buy one, get one free, get a free month's rent. That just is that's how it works, right? Nothing weird. They've been doing that forever. And by the way, another thing on data, a lot of people will tell you this year, you just watch. If this happens with new home construction, if we see new home supply actually fall, the narrative will be from a lot of folks, they're hiding the data. Well, guess what? If they're only putting one new home in the MLS right now, but a massive amount of new homes are not listed in the MLS, they've always done that. So it's nothing new. It's nothing new at all. You don't have any sound? Uh-oh. No sound. Incentives on new builds in my area only 5 to 7%. I think the average incentive right now is like 15% from home builders, according to Resi Club. It's a lot. But even 5 to 7% is something. Yep. No new build crash I was kind of hoping for. I mean, new home prices are off a lot. I mean, they're off like the high was like 420 grand, I think. Now I think they're in they're right underneath 400,000. And I think new homes right now overall are less expensive than existing homes. I think they are on a national basis. So there has been a price decline in new homes. They had to. They had to, right? Supply and demand, right? I was hoping to get a deal in Prescott, Arizona. Huh. Still can't, huh? That's surprising. Obviously, not enough people are desperate there. Now in Arizona, you got a lot of newer homes, right? Not a lot of old stock. I mean, there is old inventory, but not like it is in the Midwest. No, I've never complimented you, Patrick, but your glasses are something else. Those are like serious stunner glasses. Were you in Vegas when you took that? Those aren't glasses you walk around Ohio in, right? You get beat up for that. I'm just kidding. It's they're cool. I always like stuff that's different. Prescott is so beautiful. Yeah, it is. Ridiculous out there. It's like one of my favorite areas. Yeah, he has billions in real estate. Who are you talking about? Trump? Yeah, he does. Agreed. If I can swing it, I want to build on the west side of Prescott. Nice. Wow. That's true. Trump is in commercial real estate, not residential. But you got to think that a lot of his cronies and himself and his family members are all tied into the residential market, right? Either owning rentals or they're part of some hedge fund, that's part of this other thing, LLC, whatever, that is going to benefit from higher home prices. I mean, the guy in charge of the FHFA, the division of the government that's supposed to create affordable housing. I mean, that person is like the member, is a family member of one of the largest home builders in the nation. The whole administration's chock full of people that benefit from higher asset prices. And I suspect it's been like that for a really long time, not just this administration, probably all future administrations too. When it comes down to what they'll do, if it's against their own interests, they won't do it. They just won't do it. That's just human nature. They don't want asset prices to fall. That's why they're trying to lower interest rates when maybe we don't need to do that. Do you think mass deportations will hit the pricing in 2026? Yeah, so I look at this and think this will probably slow demand somewhat. But the other thing I consider is that this will also hurt supply. Because when I'm on the job site, I go to a lot of new home construction job sites. When I'm on the job site, the folks that are building those homes are probably the hardest workers I've ever witnessed in my life. And from my days back during the GFC, when I lived in Southern California, I went to job sites every day. That's all I did. And I trained all these workers on safety. And man, these dudes work. And if you're deporting those people, who's going to build the houses? So that may be a problem if we have to ramp up supply. And I think that may cause prices to go up because they can't build enough supply. And we're talking years down the road, right? But I think the deportation thing may take a while to actually materialize, but we'll see it again in new listings, right? If you can't rent out your building because there's not enough rental demand because of the deportations, you're going to then put it on the market. And when you put it on the market, it becomes a new listing. I learned that real money isn't in commercial real estate. It's in daycare centers. Interesting. Yes, print to worthless like every single fiat currency in the world history. Yeah. I mean, are we close to the Weimar Republics? People are like, hey, you print one more time, we're going to be the Weimar Republic. No, I don't think so. No, no. I don't think so. But it's definitely currency debasement, right? And it's continued printing money into existence. That's what it is, right? Creating money into existence. Master chefs at the BLS. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if any of that data is reliable. That's my point on the median household income. Like, what if the reality is the median household income is much higher than what we think? Is it possible the data is wrong? Well, if it's wrong for inflation and it's wrong for the housing market and it's wrong for new construction, why isn't it wrong for the median household income? I mean, that's the problem with being a conspiracy theorist with data and telling your viewers and telling anybody the data's cooked, don't listen to it because you don't like the data. That's the problem with it. Because then what do you trust? I mean, how can you tell your viewers and the people around you to trust the housing data, but don't trust this, or not trust the housing data, but trust this? I'm saying I'm not sure if the data is right. I'm just looking at the new listings and the inventory. I can't police the data. I'm not going to get you. I'm not going to get them. I'm not going to get them in a trap. I'm not going to change the BLS. But it's a good question to bring up. How do we know the median household income stat is wrong? How do we know it's not way higher? People are like, how do people afford these homes? Maybe the median household income is higher. Maybe their methodology is wrong. I'm just looking through. Median home values cooked. All incentives are not calculated in sales price. You get $50K off a home. New home at amount sold can offset. Yeah, so this is why, that's a great point. So check this out. This is Resi Club Terminal. So this is the system I use to analyze home prices, or a lot of the system I use. And this is from Resi Club, and this is their application. And if I look at home prices, and Planet of the Amps point is that a lot of times companies will use median home price and say, hey, median home price is the house that's sold in the middle. So if you sold 10 houses, number 5, the 5th house, is considered median. And if you have different incentives built in, and another argument is if you have more homes selling in the upper end of the spectrum, then you will probably skew that median home price higher. And so a lot of people don't like the median home price. That's why it could be that Zillow has the best analysis because they use the typical home value. I don't know if you can see this or not. Maybe you can. If you can see that. The typical value for a single family home in the 35th to 65th percentile. And so Planet of the Amps, that's why I like Zillow. I use Redfin too in a lot of my videos, but I like Zillow because they take out the top and they take out the bottom. So they're taking out all the most expensive homes and they're taking out all the cheap homes. That's kind of a good way to do it because you're taking out maybe the houses that are destroyed and you're taking out the upper end so it doesn't skew that number higher. So that's why I like Zillow for the home price analysis. Now, according to Zillow, if I look at Ohio, for instance, we're at $240,000. Again, that's the 35th to 65th percentile on homes, not the top, not the bottom. Right now, and this is just an example, Ohio is at an all-time high price. It says our typical home value is $240,000. Now, nationally, the typical home value is like $369, about $369, and it's up 0.1% according to Zillow and the 35th to 65th percentile, taking out the bottom and taking out the top, the extremes. That's why I like Zillow. So as an example, our price is crashing right now. Well, in Ohio, for instance, and just as Ohio, prices are at an all-time high record price. They've never been higher in Ohio overall. That's an example. But yeah, it's that's why I like Zillow. I think it's more genuine. And yeah, there's incentives. There's incentives built in, no doubt. We've probably always had those, right? We always will. So why isn't there a law that makes sure the incentives aren't calculated? Because it would bring values down. I don't think that's the case. I think you're policing home builders. I think the policing of it would be a nightmare because every MLS. Well, actually, how about this? In the MLS, there are rules. So if a builder has a house listed on the MLS, or anybody does, the MLS has very specific rules. And remember, there's like 300 different MLSs. They all kind of operate differently. But if there's a rule in the MLS, like there is here locally for me in Columbus, it has an area at the end to fill in an incentive. But it's not required by any means. It's not required. So at the end, when I'm done and I've sold a house, right? I've listed a house for a client and it closes. And let's say the seller gave somebody $5,000 in, gave the buyer $5,000 in incentives. At the end, when I'm filling that out and saying, all right, the home closed yesterday, here's how much it sold for, here's the other agent involved, that's how you do it in the system in the MLS. Well, there's a part in there for me to actually say exactly how much the incentives were. And because of that, it takes that into account, but it doesn't actually take that off the sold price. That's the difference. It doesn't. You have to look and figure out how much the incentive was. So in the MLS, it doesn't even come off the sold price. And it hasn't. And I think if it came off the sold price, then you would see the incentive and be like, oh, it's sold for even less. It's like, no, it's sold. Here's the sale amount, 300 grand, let's pretend, had 5K in incentives. It actually, then obviously it sold for $295,000. But the actual price that in the contract was 300 grand. That's how it's done. So I don't know if this will ever be like policed or fixed or whatever. I think it is just how it is. That's why shopping for a new home can be difficult. And so you got to really dial it in on your incentives and know exactly what you're getting and how much they're worth on incentives in order to buy a new home. And then compare it against existing homes. So it doesn't just happen with new, it happens with existing is my point. That's a great question though, great point. That was a fun time at Easton Sunglasses Hut. For real though, I didn't buy them. You're at Easton, I get it. Sunglass Hut, yeah. That's a cool picture though. I like it. Stands out. I like that. How it's just, you pick your, every time you comment or anything, I can see it. I'm like, oh, that's Patrick because of your glasses. Jason, on a serious note, those sunglasses would make you the coolest housing nerd. Yeah. I got speaking of that, I got something for Christmas. Santa was nice to me. I got a Elgato Stream Deck, which is like this thing that you can, these buttons and stuff you can hit to have shortcuts to different things while you're live streaming. I'm not sure I'm going to use it a lot yet, but it has sound effects on it. And I was like, can I use sound effects? But I kind of think it's too cheesy for my channel. So I probably will hold off on the sound effects unless you all like sound effects. I kind of do, but it's all about the viewer, not me. Yeah, I need a shtick, huh? Hard to create a shtick. It's got to happen naturally. So maybe it will. Agreed. BLS is a big player for data. I'd trust more if third-party and public data move together. I trust BLS relative moves, but I'm skeptical due to staggering revisions in recent past. Yeah, who knows what's going on over there? Who knows what? I mean, look at the inflation. Thanks, Shane, for the comment. You've made a few of them. Who knows what's going on with the inflation? I guess, they just made, August was 0. They're like, oh, inflation was 0 in August because we didn't have any data. So we just use 0. I mean, do you expect them to get, by the way, it was not good and not, it wasn't trustworthy when the last administration was in office. Has it improved? Has it improved? No, it hasn't. It absolutely hasn't improved. Do you think it'll improve with the next administration? No, it won't. There may be fixes here and there, but it hasn't improved. It's the same old story. Revisions, missing data, don't have it. And to your point, if private companies acted like this, they wouldn't survive. They wouldn't survive. You got to have accurate data. Agree. BLS is a big player for data. Oh, okay. You already got this. My bad. No, there's not. There's not. There's not a way to do that. I can do it locally with the MLS, with my MLS, but I can't do it. That data doesn't have that. And nationally, I don't have that kind of data with incentives. I mean, like overall, I've seen reports on what home builders are giving what incentives. I would check out, if you really want that info, I would check out Resi Club Analytics. Now they only have it for new construction though. And they talk about like Pulte, Lennar, how much they're giving out in incentives. I think the soundboard is a great idea. When someone says housing crash or homes are too expensive in the chat, you hit something funny, clever in the soundboard. Do I have one right now? Let me see. See if I have one. I don't know if this will come through or not. So this is like a live test. So I've got this. I don't know if you guys can even hear this. Let me see. Some of you can hear this. That's Homer Simpson saying, stupid government trying to keep us down. I got that one. I got this one. The government can take the house. Let me know if you can hear those. I don't know if you can. That was Gordon Gekko. Yeah, maybe I'll implement more of those. I think everyone knows there's a widespread fraud happening within the US in multiple sectors, including housing. Of course there is. Not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. You shouldn't be either. There's probably been fraud in the housing system ever since there was the very first hut or cave. Like think way back in the day when somebody built the first hut where they staked out the first cave. One guy had a bigger cave than the other guy. And one guy was like, well, you got that cave because of this, and this reason. That's fraud. I think it's always been in place, and I think it always will because we're human. And we all have different interests, right? We all have different interests in what we're after. So I think that's that's what we're dealing with. I don't think it'll ever leave. The whole notion of like, I'm not saying you're saying this, but I see it a lot and I shake my head and I feel bad for people because they're like, when the fraud and the greed and the corruption are out of the housing market, that's when I'll get mine and buy a house. And you're like, that's never going to happen. There's always going to be something goofy going on, whether it be like missing data, extend and pretend, fraud with FHA buyers, loans that are fake, straw buyers. That's a term, straw buyer, where it's like a fake buyer, right? We've seen those happen. I think there's always going to be fraud in the system. And I think you have to internalize that and realize that that's going to happen and you can't wait on that to be fixed. There's not going to be perfect conditions, I don't think so anyway. Your channel was really helpful to me during 2025. Oh, I'm glad it was. It gave me a good pulse in the market. I look forward to what you have in store for 2026. That's great, Coors Light. I appreciate you. You're one of the first folks to ever jump on my streams. We only had 5 people. We got 45 on, by the way, now. So that's an improvement. But hit the like button if you've joined. Don't be a freeloader. But thank you, Coors Light, for all your support. Really, seriously, thank you. And I'm glad that it was helpful. That's what I want to continue to do. Not in area is not in my backyard. Right. A lot of people like that. I think Fed maintains independence in the quality of their data. Is that sarcastic? I think it is. Yeah. Independence, right? Sure. Meet Kevin does that kind of stuff on his live stream, and it's pretty funny. Oh, okay. I've watched some of his live streams. I haven't heard that. I just have to pick some, make sure I can hear him. I didn't hear any of those sound clips. Yeah, I don't think I have it dialed into my system yet, so I'll do that. No worries. It's a waste of time looking at the housing market national. You have to focus on your local market. That's true. Otherwise, you just lose focus on what's important. Well, I think it's just a trend to look at, right? I mean, this is a national channel. I have an Ohio channel because I live in Ohio. So I talk about very specific Ohio markets, and I agree. You got to look at local. But I think it's important to understand nationally what's happening and how that, and then look at your local market. And I think it's important nationally because it gives you perspective, right? And it gives you the knowledge so that you're not fooled. You know, you're not fooled when someone says this is happening, like housing market is going down in the tubes or housing market is soaring. You can be like, that may be national, but locally, that's not what's happening. And I think it also gives you some context for like how housing markets function and just react, right? But it's by no means the only solution. You should definitely look at local info. I mean, that's where I spend most of my time, but this is a national channel, so I got to talk nationally. Now, I don't know if you've been on my live stream before or looked at my videos, but I do a ton of localized info. Like a lot of times on these live streams, I'll go 2 hours, 2.5 hours looking at tons and tons of very specific markets. Like viewers will request zip codes, right? So I'll do like, I won't do it all, but like I go here to my Resi Club terminal and I'll say, I want to do 43205. Or 43344. And so I can look at a specific zip code, right? And I can look at what's going on. So I'll do that on a live. I'll do it on the live Thursday. You can join if you want. And I go through very specific counties, cities, or zip codes. I don't think any other channel does that, not the degree I do. But what I like to show is the national trend and then localized info. So you're right. I mean, to that point, a little late to the party as far as my live stream and this data I'm presenting, but like these are the home prices year over year. Well, actually, let's look at this. These are home prices since 2022. Since 2022, this is how much they've grown by state, to your point, locally, right? So California's up just 0.1% since 2022. Texas, down 5%. Ohio, up 14%. So very localized. So like in Texas, the whole state's down 5%. Watch this. I'm going to now look at zip code level data. There we go. So this is Texas, obviously, but this is by zip code. How much home prices have increased or decreased since 2022? Red is bad, blue is good. Not a lot of blue areas, right? So in some of these markets or some of these areas, look at this. I think this is Houston, this area right here. 78660 zip code is down 25% since 2022. That's a crash, right? In all counts, that's a crash. Or is that Austin? I don't know. I don't know my geography in Texas very well. But anyway, that zip code's down a ton, even though the state's only down 5%. Now, check this out. If I go to Ohio, look at what it looks like. You want to talk about a difference in states? Look at that. Ohio's up 14% since 2022. Look at some of these zip codes, though. 16.6%, 12%, 20%, 18%, 21%. This particular zip code in Ohio. Let me look at Central. Now, a few of them are actually going down, right? Like this zip code here, which I think that's Akron, if I'm thinking right. That's down 20%, 44691 in Ohio, down actually 21% since 2022 in home prices, not year over year, down 2022. So agreed, it's very localized. That's why you should stick with the housing nerd, because I'm going to show you national data. Then we're going to dive into the metro level. We'll even dive into zip codes if you want to, and really look at the housing market to find out what's going on, right? That's what we got to do. So thanks for bringing up my point. That was good. Hilton Head, the houses at the $2.5 million level are selling for semi-reasonable prices. But in the 1 to 1.5 range, people are overpaying. Interested to see the rich versus poor impacts in the same market. Well, Tom, come back on Thursday, and I'll dive into Hilton Head. You just need to give me some zip codes. You can also, after this stream, you can comment in the video and tell me your zip codes, and I will. I'll go ahead and do them. When searched for how many homes were sold in 2025 with incentives, in 2025, builders incentives significantly boosted new home sales, with 66% of builders offering incentives. Just saying, absolutely. Oh, builders offer incentives. They absolutely do. They have to, right? When you have supply that's, when you have supply that's over demand, you have to have incentives to move product. That's just like apartments do it. That's just like, what else? Cars do it. Name a product. Everybody has incentives. So I think that's normal. I think you're going to continue to see that. But I guess the point of all that is they are not going to anytime soon fix the incentive hoodwinking. So they're going to have, so what that means is if you want to buy a house and you happen to want to buy a new home, you're either going to have to play in the game that's there or not buy one. And that's just the same thing that I look at when I look at inventory. And people say, we don't need any more inventory. I go, well, then why can't you find a house? Why can't you find the house for pennies on the dollar or the deal of your dreams? Why is the house that you want to buy unavailable to you at the price point you need it to be at? Because we don't have enough homes. If we had enough homes available, not just existing, like actually like, material existing on the market. I'm talking about available for sale homes. If we had enough of those, you would be able to buy the house at the price you want. Vacant, and doesn't matter if it's vacant, because vacant does not mean available. So if you've got a bunch of new homes that are vacant, if they're not for sale, what does it matter, right? So it's like, we just got to play the hand we're dealt. And right now, nobody's coming in to save us in the housing market. They're certainly not going to fix the incentive thing with the builders. I haven't seen any evidence of it at all. It's the same thing with institutional investors. That's the same thing we're dealing with BlackRock and Blackstone and Black Knight and whoever else. Incentives are just part of the game, I think. And with the institutional investors, nobody's coming to save us with those people. The best way to keep institutional investors out is to buy real estate and keep it. That's the best way to do it. That keeps them out. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean it's 66% of the price has an incentive. It means the 66% are giving incentives. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the price could be lower. Well, the price is lower on existing homes. It's the same thing that happens. When you look at all the existing home prices, it doesn't count incentives. It does not. It does not. I have to actually go into that listing in my MLS and look at that listing and go all the way down or pull a report that has incentives on it. I'll do that. That's something I'm going to do. Planet of the Amps. And it never answered me though. Is that a car audio thing? Planet of the Amps? I'm just asking because it seems like it's a cool name of an car audio store. Uh, Planet of the Amps. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull that from my MLS for next week, maybe the week after, whenever I can get to it. And I'll look and say, hey, here are all the homes. These aren't just new homes, though. It'll be new and existing. Anything in the MLS that's sold over the past whatever days, we'll pick it, 90 days, 6 months, whatever. And then I'm going to look at the incentives and we're going to see. And there are incentives all over the place, even for existing homes, and they're not they're recorded, but it's not recorded in the data you're looking at and I'm looking at. It's recorded like behind the scenes. And that's new. Up until like 2 years ago, there was no place to put incentives. If the seller gave like $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 in incentives, that you wouldn't be able to see that at all unless the agent really was doing their, being thorough and actually entered it. And by the way, they still have to enter it. An agent has to enter it correctly for it to show up. It's not automatic. That's, by the way, I laugh when I heard somebody recently, it was last year or the year before. They said, hey, the public needs access to MLS. No, there's no way that would work because there's 300 of them. And the rules and regulations inside the MLS are draconian. If you mess something up, they'll ding you and fine you in 2 seconds. There's a very strict way you have to put the info in. I don't see the public doing that. So I don't think, and somebody has to pay for the MLS because they're all individually ran. I've noticed in my Metro Spokane, Washington, the spread between sellers asking and Zillow suggested offer prices based on comp is increasing. The spread between sellers asking and Zillow suggested offer prices. I'm curious if this shows softening that's more seasonal. Yeah, you mean the asking price is higher than the sale price. I'm seeing that come in line too. But you're saying it's increasing. It could just be more expensive homes being listed. Or it could be sellers are just still delusional and listing their home for prices that don't make sense. And then eventually when a house does sell, it's selling for a lower price, right? I mean, the Washington market's tough. I don't know about Spokane, but the Seattle market's tough. I mean, it's expensive, and I doubt it's cheap in Spokane. But yeah, I mean, it could be a sign of softening. It could be a sign that the sellers are just listing their homes. They're either listing more expensive homes or they're just not pricing their homes right. They make their money in loan terms. So did people really make out with the incentive? I don't know. They make their money in loan terms. So did people really make out with the incentive? I don't know. You mean the buyers? That's a great question. Incentives can really be a big problem, like when you're analyzing deals, right? Because the builder says, hey, you get a bunch of new appliances and we're giving you $50,000 in incentives. Some rate buy down, get some granite countertops, maybe some new appliances. And as a buyer, you think, woo, I got a deal. But if you look at the value of those and then look at what you're actually getting, maybe it's not a better deal. Maybe they didn't make out. Like, let's be honest, like appliances, you can get like where I usually go, sometimes I'll go to like Lowe's or whatnot to buy appliances for my units if I can get a really good deal or a flip. But oftentimes I get used appliances. You can buy used appliances for like nothing. Do you need like the latest and greatest? Probably not. So if you have a new home and you're like, hey, I'm getting new appliances and they say it's a $5,000 appliance package, it's like, well, if I could buy appliances for $2,000, maybe I don't need that incentive. Just give me $5,000 off the house. Will they do that? I don't know. Sometimes they won't. Oh, I heard what you're saying, but this spins back to median home value. Thanks for interacting. Oh, yeah. No worries. No, guitar restoration, tube amps especially. There you go. I didn't think that. I'm not a guitarist. I play the drums, but I'm not a guitarist. So I did not think of that. Okay. Guitar amp restoration. That's pretty cool. Tube amps. Boy, that's like old school. I used to have a tube amplifier actually for my house. I used to have one. Pretty cool though. Hey, Space Ranger, what's up? You guys, you should get together Planet of the Amps. Looks like you're a guitar person and he's an amp guy. Pretty neat. So I've blown through all the comments. You guys are very interactive today. I hope that helped. I hope this 2026 forecast helped. I hope you learned something in the first 30 minutes of the video, and then it was just us kind of rambling together. That's how we do it, though, right? I deliver all the value up front and then stick around for the conversation. But overall, I'm thinking, hey, prices aren't going to crash. They're not going to explode either. 1% down, 2% down, 1% up. Wouldn't be shocked at all that. I think they are going to be down year over year, but just slightly. And I think you'll see more inventory. I think you'll see, that 10 to 15% rise in inventory. I think you'll also see more transactions, not a ton more, but a slight uptick in transactions, in sales. You will see more distress in 2025. You'll see more people have to sell their home, people that need to sell their home. I think you'll see that. You see more foreclosures, certainly. And I'm not convinced interest rates are going to fall that much. If they happen to fall a ton, like fall to 5%, heaven forbid, then who knows what's going to happen. If they fall right underneath 6%, maybe sales pick up a little bit. That could actually cause prices to come down more than 1 or 2%, maybe. But that's kind of the housing nerd forecast. Obviously, it definitely will be regional. So that's a national forecast. Regionally, a lot depends on inventory, right? So watch inventory, watch new listings, watch distress. And I want to really encourage you to take a step back from the data and the headlines when you see them, pointing to one extreme or the other, either a lot of doom or a lot of cheerleading. You see more doom than cheerleading. But if you see a lot of doom in your scrolling, in your feed, take it with a grain of salt and understand that there are factors that have to come in play in order for inventory to fall or rise, and then prices fall and rise. Don't get hoodwinked out there, folks. Like, subscribe to the Housing Nerd. Let's make it a great 2026. I will see you on Thursday. We're going to do a deep dive into the housing market. Right now, it's your chance to ask about zip codes, states, counties, cities, and we will dissect it: inventory, prices, new listings, days on market, price cuts, all that good stuff. I'm the Housing Nerd, and I am out.